Welcome to literary and jury charge practice. Let's get started with this literary, and it's called How Important is Punctuation? Ready? All reporters deserve the greatest respect from all with whom they come in contact and all who read their transcripts. If all reporters want to have the respect of all, whether judges, attorneys, or anyone, then they have to earn that respect. And the way to gain that respect is to do a great job capturing all of the words spoken and transcribing them correctly and punctuationally correctly on every single case. I was very proud to be a reporter. Each case was a challenge, but it was very satisfying to know that I did my very best on every case. The profession of reporting is just that, a profession, and we should all aspire to be true professionals. My last question to all reporters is, what better way to preserve our reporting profession than to do as perfect and professional a job, taking down all of the words spoken and transcribing them with correct punctuation as is humanly possible. I rest my case. All right, now some jury charge practice. This jury charge is called Evaluating Testimony. Ready? This is a civil case, and you are the exclusive judges of the weight of the evidence and the credibility of the witnesses. In determining the weight you will give to the evidence of any witness, you have a right to take into consideration the demeanor of such witness on the stand, his or her candor and sincerity in testifying, or the lack of the same, his or her interest or lack of interest in the outcome of the suit, his or her knowledge or lack of knowledge concerning the facts about which he or she has testified, his or her prejudice or bias, if any, is shown, his or her relationship, if any, to either party to the suit, and such other facts and circumstances disclosed by the evidence as will assist you in determining the weight you should give to the evidence in the case. Neither by these instructions nor by any words uttered or remark made by the court during this trial does or did the court intimate or mean to give or wish to be understood as giving an opinion as to what the proof is or what it is not, or what the facts are in this cause or what are not the facts therein. It is solely and exclusively for the jury to find and determine the facts, and this they must do from the evidence. Having done so, they apply to them the law as stated in these instructions. The instructions to the jury are and constitute one connected body and series, and should be so regarded and treated by the jury. That is to say, they should apply them to the facts as a whole, and not detach or separate any one instruction from any of the others. All right, now let's start this literary, and it is called Court Reporting is Calling. Ready? It's final. I've sold my Lightspeed on eBay and no longer have a steno machine attached to my fingers. Court reporting has been the biggest part of my life for more than 30 years. I loved it and appreciate the fact that it took me places I never even dreamed of or knew existed. At the age of 18, I said a prayer, not even realizing the significance of it at the time, but asked for God to guide me in life's journey. I had just graduated from high school, and college wasn't in my future. I was working at a drugstore, and one of the ladies I worked with was going to court reporting school. She guided me through the process of getting started at the Academy of Stenographic Arts in San Francisco, California. I had such a love for court reporting from the time I first learned how to pound words out on that little machine. 3 years later, I was on my first job in Atlanta, Georgia, working for freelancer Jim White. I started transcribing for him, and occasionally he would send me out on a few jobs. Then I got my first real job with Forrest Brown, RDR, retired. He was a great guy to work with and had a fabulous team. It was a fun place, and I really didn't want to leave, but Washington, D.C. was calling, and that's where I spent the majority of my career. To some jury charge, and this jury charge is regarding interpretation of state law. Interpretation of state law. Ready? I agree that the state action was properly enjoined, and so I concur in the opinion of the court to that extent, but I dissent from the direction to the district court to hold the case while the parties repair to the state court to get an interpretation of the Louisiana statute around which this litigation turns. That procedure is advisable where private parties question the constitutionality of a state statute. An authoritative construction of the state law may avoid the constitutional issue or put it in new perspective. Under Section 1331, the Federal District Court has jurisdiction where the matter in controversy exceeds the jurisdictional amount and arises under the Constitution, laws, or treaties of the United States. In litigation in the federal courts under that statute, the necessity of construing state law arises because of the federal court's duty to avoid, if possible, a federal constitutional question. Here, although potential constitutional questions may lurk in the background, this litigation primarily concerns title to land claimed by the United States. It is litigation which Congress, by Sections 1345 and 1346, has entrusted to the Federal District Court. Those sections allow civil litigation of the United States to be conducted in the federal courts. In that situation, it is the duty of the federal court to decide all issues in the case, those turning on state law as well as those turning on federal law. In Raymond v. Clark, a case in the federal courts by reason of diversity of citizenship, we refused to remit the parties to the state court for decision of difficult state law questions. We held that it was the duty of the federal court to decide all issues in the case, state or federal, difficult or easy. All right, let's see, did we have any challenging words? We had constitutionality, jurisdictional, so jurisdiction and jurisdictional, constitution, diversity of citizenship, okay, back to some literary material. Ready? I met Hal Alderson during a time of transition when he was handing his company over to his daughter and son-in-law. I had a couple of years under my belt and was still just starting out. They decided to take a chance on a new reporter and hired me. Working in D.C. is unlike most places in the country. Lots of government contracts and Capitol Hill. I was 23 years old, and I would be sent out to report congressional hearings, taking the testimony of the likes of generals and dignitaries I didn't even know existed. It would hold me in good stead later in my career. Freelancing wasn't what I really wanted to do, so when an opening came up in federal court in Washington, D.C., I took the test. To my surprise, I was hired by the then chief reporter, Don Copeland. This was the place where the Watergate trials had taken place, as well as the trial that culminated in the breakup of AT&T. I had the privilege of working for most of the judges there. The cases were interesting and varied, the most memorable being the trial of Oliver North. Santa Zizo and I spent several weeks delivering daily copy to Brendan Sullivan and his team. Back to some jury charge. Ready? There have been exceptions to this policy, notably in bankruptcy proceedings where trustees are sometimes sent into state courts to obtain adjudications on local law questions pertinent to the administration of the bankrupt's estate. It is peculiarly inappropriate to follow that course here. Congress has decided that the United States should have the benefit of the protection of its own courts in this type of litigation. We properly hold that the federal court, not the state court, has jurisdiction of the controversy. But we beat the devil around the bush when, having taken the litigation out of the state court, we send the parties back to the state court for its construction of Louisiana law, which is the most significant issue in the case. The problem is not only to construe the state statute, but to construe it constitutionally. The federal court can make that construction as readily as the state court. That is the congressional scheme, and we should not change it by judicial fiat. We had adjudications, pertinent, peculiarly, I have trouble with that word, peculiarly, peculiarly. I'm going to stop. I'll stop right there. I think it might be a good word, though, to practice. Controversy, constitutionally, scheme, congressional scheme. All right, let's get back to our literary. court reporting is calling. When an opportunity came up for a job in San Diego, it was hard to resist. Having been born and raised in Northern California, I knew the weather in San Diego was even better, and I jumped at the opportunity, spending an additional 6 years in federal court there. But Washington, D.C. was in my blood, and when I was offered a job on Capitol Hill, I headed back. I'll never forget when I came to D.C. to interview for the job with the chief reporter for the House of Representatives. It was the middle of June. At the end of the day, I was walking down the Capitol steps, something you could do at that time without armed security being there. The sky was so thick with humidity, and it was so hot, I remember saying out loud, "Are you crazy? Why would you leave San Diego to come back to this?" But I did. All right, that will conclude our literary and jury charge practice.